Hello there, my name is Michael Maynard and welcome back to Gorilla Picking. Now, what we are going to do very shortly is pick this lock here. So this is a Lockwood Twin. Lovely, lovely locks these. They are like a slightly watered down version of one of the early Assa Twins, and you'll see me strip this later on. So I'm recording this intro after I've done the pick, clearly, because you can see all the bits and pieces. The things that you got to know here are number one, we have got 6 top pins and 3 sidebar sliders. The top pins here are 3 standard pins. Now, standard for a Lockwood means tapered. So we've got chambers 1, 3 and 6 are tapered standards. And then 2, 4 and 5 are these little spools. You'll see when I do the pick in a minute that I'm actually really lucky and I set these without needing counter rotation, which was a bit of a fluke. It sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't. Here is what the core looks like. So we've got the 6 standards and then a very short little sidebar slot and chambers down there, obviously. And then the sidebar itself will look very familiar to anybody who has picked an Assa Twin, obviously. The bitting on this one is actually quite difficult. So what I did, and again I'll cover this in a minute, but there's no key with this lock, unfortunately. So when I pulled it all apart, I found this disastrous mess over here was what the key pins look like. I have kept faithful to the sizes there and repinned it with standard size pins, so it's no longer mastered to hell. And kept this top pinning the same, obviously 3 spools and 3 standards, and then the sidebar you can't do much about. The bitting is the bitting. And with this particular one, number 1 sets fairly high, numbers 2 and 3 set right up at the very top of these chambers here. And so when I'm picking this, what you'll see is that I start out picking the sidebar sliders down the bottom here, get them up so far, and then have to come up and pick from this little ledge on the warding, which I actually find very difficult because you haven't got nearly as much feel up there. So down here everything's nice and solid, but with the pick up here it's actually quite hard work. So that's what we got. If you hang on 2 seconds, guys, we'll get this in the vise and we'll get it picked for you. All right, folks, well, let's get this open. So you can see I'm raking the pins. It's locked up. We're going to get some clockwise tension on there, and we're going to attack these top pins. Being a high security lock, tolerances on this are really tight, and it seems to pick differently every time. What I've noticed is that sometimes you'll get into a situation where you actually pick the spools, you'll set the spools without having to actually counter rotate them, and other times you'll hit a false set and have to counter rotate and pick the spools from there. There doesn't seem to be any reliable way to make it fall into either a false set every time or set the spools every time. I wish there was some obvious way of doing that. So I'm using what for me is medium tension for, we've just dropped into that false set. I'm using what for me is medium tension and for most guys will be heavy tension. So we are in a false set though, and what I'm going to do now is see just how many of those spools we have picked. So backing right off on the tension, 0 tension on there now, looking for counter rotation, nothing on 6, nothing on 5, nothing on 4, nothing on 3, holy crap, nothing on 2, nothing on 1. Okay, by sheer fluke, honestly, we've managed to set all 3 of those spools, so the top of this lock is now picked. Now what we've got to do is pick the sidebar. Now I have to do that in 2 stages. What I'm doing at the moment is using my pick and going from the bottom of the keyway. Now this is my Spooks tool dimple, best dimple pick you can get, but unfortunately it's not tall enough to get the pins once they get up higher. So what we're going to have to do is delicately go across and get everything into either a false or a true gate, and at that point the sidebar sliders, the pins are high enough up that you lose them and you can't feel them from the bottom anymore. I think we're just about there actually. So now what we're doing is going in from this ledge and very carefully here testing these pins. Okay, 1 feels set, 3's the binder. Two is in a false gate by the sound, by the feel of it. Okay, what have we dropped? 1. Okay, see that little turn there? Everything very definitely now in either a true or a false gate. 1 feels like a true gate. 2 feels like a true gate. 3 feels like a false gate. Okay, so let's back off on the tension. Did I get it or did I not? Yeah, I did. Okay, so we're open. Now what we got to do is strip this thing and show you what's inside it. Now, because I don't have a key, this is actually a bit of a nightmare job. Much easier to disassemble one of these locks if you've got a key for it, because otherwise we're going to have bits of the sidebar going all over the place, but it's just the way that we've got to do it. So I will slowly and carefully get this thing apart. Now the first thing we're going to do is put a shim in there. You always disassemble locks with shims. I don't care who you are or what you're doing. Second thing, we're going to start getting this core out of there and attempt to not lose the sidebar or the sliders. So there's the sidebar just coming into view there, and if I've got my finger over everything, I think we're in business. Okay, so okay, that was a top pin. We'll come to that momentarily. There are our sidebar sliders. But why don't we get some sidebar components out first? There's the sidebar, pretty standard looking sidebar, I've got to say. There are the 2 sidebar springs. Let's dump them out as well. Now, sidebar sliders. I dropped another top pin. That's all right, I can live with that. There's number 1. There's number 2, and there's number 3. We'll dump their springs as well. So we've now got sidebar sliders and sidebar springs out of there. Okay, now let's deal with these bottom pins. Now, 1's dropped out already. That's 2. That's 3, 4's out, 5 and 6. Now I'm just trying to remember which one of these we had where. I think the shorter one was actually in the front. So that's how the pinning looks, and you can see that that's a fairly standard looking core. Now let's get the drivers out and we're done. Have we still got a shim in there? No, the shim's gone. Okay, so 1 should be a standard. 2 is going to be a spool. We'll get a better look at that in a minute. 3, standard. 4, nasty little spool. 5 spool, and 6 finally. Another standard. And there's all the springs. All right, so as you can see, folks, nice, well, I was going to say easy pinning. That's not true, actually, but it's simple to understand pinning. We've got these sidebar sliders, which will be familiar to anyone that's ever picked an Assa Twin. You can see that they have false gates and one true gate, so they're not mastered, obviously. Now, there used to be actually a ton of mastering in the top of this lock, and that's what all this rubbish over here is. So what I did was kept the pinning faithful to what this was, but put standard pins in there instead of a shit ton of little wee short pins and master wafers. And here's one of these little spools. So let's show you one of those. You can see that they are really sharp, really gnarly little buggers, and I was actually a bit lucky there that they all set at once, to be absolutely honest. So there you go, folks. Really cool lock. I know for you Northern Hemisphere guys, it's actually quite hard to get a hold of these, but if you can get one of these, please get it. They are great and they're very fun. Thanks for watching, folks. See you on the next one.